A little more than a year ago, I made a video taking a broken DS Lite and turning it into a Game Boy Advance. It's a pretty common modification that's known as the Game Boy Advanced Macro. And while that video was me just trying to put it together as best I could with that case, it was still pretty cool at the end of it when I had a Game Boy Advance that was pretty unique. Well, after that video, people were mentioning that there are like actual parts that are created for this Game Boy Advanced Macro. And I did want to go back eventually and redo the modification again with some of these newer parts. They've all come back in stock and I had a chance to order them, and I thought we'd try to rebuild the Game Boy Macro now in 2022. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. So for this video, I did get a DS Lite off of eBay that was broken. Once again, I figured I can recycle one and turn it into a Game Boy Advance rather than have it destined for the scrapyard. But let's take a look. It is the blue DS Lite. We have blue and red. I think I preferred the red one a bit more, but obviously it comes down to color choice because otherwise it is all matte black around the bottom. And that's really the part we care about because this is the shell that we'll be keeping for the Game Boy Advanced Macro. I didn't see anything about what's wrong with it though in the description. It just says it won't turn on, and that could be a few reasons, but it looks like the screens are okay. I don't see anything major when it comes to cracking. I really just need the bottom screen to be working, that's all. It doesn't even have to be in decent shape when it comes to the screen on top here because that will be removed, and I have a glass screen that's gonna go on top of it to complete the look. Let's see if we turn it on. We have green light. And it powers off, but it does look like, so we see the bottom screen flashes right there, but nothing on the top. What happens when the DS Lite attempts to power on, it'll go through its typical post, but if both screens are not functional, it will flash the one that is. So we can see the bottom screen is flashing, the top screen is not. This is like the best case scenario when it comes to a system to turn into the Game Boy Advance Macro. We don't need the top screen at all. So perfect, we have our system here. Let's go over some of the parts that I picked up, starting with, this is the glass protector here that's gonna go over it. And then this is the Game Boy Advanced Macro, basically the plate that you use to replace that top part. I got this really nice blue color here, and this is from Boxy Pixel. They have a whole bunch of different colors you can get. I saw purple was up. I don't think that was in stock. I think when I had ordered this at the time, there were like 2 colors in stock. It was a little while ago, and I've been kind of waiting to do this modification now. But definitely check out Boxy Pixel if you want to do this same thing. And this is all aluminum, so this is a serious plate for it. It also comes with all new screws here, and there was one other piece that I just wanted to try because it seems like it would make the entire process easier. This is, according to the site that was selling it, that was Retro Modding, but this is from Game Tech. This is like a Game Boy Advanced amp and flex cable that will complete the circuit for that resistor. So the system will turn on. Basically, it just bypasses that top screen check while also making the speaker sound better. And it's all one ribbon cable. I'm a big fan of these now after working on some of those console conversions, whether it's things like the Game Boy Advance, turning that into the consolizer, or working on a lot of those HDMI modifications for older systems. Anytime you can replace a bundle of cables with a flat cable like this, it just makes it a lot easier to go close up. Anyway, back to the DS Lite. Good news is it's not too hard to take apart. You need a smaller Phillips head and then a small-ish tri-wing driver. All of this can be found on Amazon. I'll leave a link down below to a set that has all these different bits for even future projects you want to do. But I'm just going to go ahead and take the back plate off and get to that motherboard. Okay, bottom plate off, and the board looks very clean. A lot of times I'm concerned when I get a used DS Lite that there will be water damage because obviously these systems were made to be taken with you, and trust me, I saw them constantly having some sort of water, whether it's around this battery area or even through the screen or like the D-pad. It was just very common for stuff to get spilled onto these systems, but everything here looks really good. So we gotta take the shoulder buttons off here. We got a couple of screws. We have a cable running underneath of the card slot here. That's the antenna on the top. Otherwise though, it'll just come out and we can start working on the board. Also, we will need these buttons and this D-pad here, but otherwise, you don't need anything else. Now, there are speakers in the top here, and that's where people will pull like the part from to drop onto this board, because you will still want sound to come out of it. Technically, you can just use the headphone jack. So if you don't care about the speaker at all and you feel like you're just gonna use headphones, you don't have to worry about it. But for this modification, I'm actually gonna be using a Nintendo Switch speaker in this one. It actually is shaped a bit better, and it seems like actually matches up pretty well, which you can see it kind of just fitting right in there. And that's the biggest thing I wanted to do here. If I was gonna redo this modification, that first one I did, while it functioned fine and everything, it still kind of felt like it was something that was thrown together with spare parts. So the idea of this fitting together as flush as possible with a new part like this, this one from Boxy Pixel, was very interesting. So even just getting that speaker just right so it sits flush is pretty important. But that's all we really need from the top. So if your top screen is shattered, destroyed, the hinge is snapped in half or just hanging off, or I guess even just missing, you can still do this modification. So like I said, you can have a DS Lite that is roughed up beyond belief and you can still make it work. We do need to remove this bottom screen, which I am going to be also pulling this digitizer off and replacing it with the glass. The thing that I've noticed with the bottom screen in particular, if you leave the digitizer portion on, it is kind of like this almost foggy barrier. It doesn't look as clear as the top screen, and that's because of the touchscreen that sits on top. So I'm hoping that with this pulled off and that clear glass in its place, it'll look a lot better. Now we get to the exciting part, which involves the soldering iron, and who doesn't like the high drama of potential fire hazards? But if we take a look at the motherboard here, there is a connector at the top, and we're gonna be removing this connector. It's for the top screen, don't need it anymore. We're not gonna have a top screen, so why have that there? In fact, it does take up enough space to where removing it would have that speaker fit in there. Well, it wasn't pretty, a lot of melted plastic, but it's off. A lot of pins obviously had to be disconnected here. You could use clippers. I'd just be careful around this component right here since it's pretty close. Now we're gonna install our flex cable that's gonna make all of this come together. And the nice thing about this modification is all of the pads are easy to solder to. Like sometimes you have to like scratch away at some of the surface on the board to find a solder point. Like these are just little pads that you'll solder to. It's super easy. And this is set up so it's going to lay down on all these spots that I've already tinned. So I'm just going around making connections currently just to hold it in place after lining it up. And then I'm gonna go back and just touch up again with some more solder and flux just to make sure the connections are solid. And it looks like that's it. All the different solder points are down. They have 7 of them, and it just looks so much cleaner than if you have to run cables or install like your own components for the amp. I do still have to solder the speaker up here, but it just ends up going together so much better this way. I'm also just taping this part off here where the cable is. Just want to make sure the speaker doesn't like jump to it or something when I'm testing it and short all of this out. Next we have our speaker, and the nice thing is the points here are like right on top of the speaker grill, so we barely need any cable coming off of it. Bottom screen does not need this digitizer anymore. It's a pretty large piece of plastic, which you can see the 2 sections here. That's the screen. That's the digitizer. That reacts to any of the touch you would do when you would play these different games. It's mostly like a kind of a sticker, sort of. You can, I believe, just peel it, in fact, right off with like a fingernail, just like this. It has a little bit of adhesive, but if you slowly kind of go around while supporting it, you'll be able to just sort of pull it off. Say just like that. Also, I realized I'm to the point now where I can test it so we can see if it was the top screen that was broken. Went all this way without even considering that. But let's see, we got the battery in there, holding it, and I'm just gonna go ahead and power it on, green light. And there we go. I'd still have to go through the setup, which I can do just with the buttons. That won't be a problem, but bottom screen seems to work fine. And because we had that digitizer that was taking most of the shots from the stylus and protecting us, it looks great. In fact, now I think we're just ready to start putting it together. So we have to put all of our buttons in with rubber pieces behind it. Of course, we only need A and B because there's no X and Y in Game Boy Advance games. Okay, so those are all in. Now the plan is to try to position the speaker specifically as this gets placed down. And there we go, everything's in place. It's nice and flush to that front housing. Have 2 screws we have to put in to hold it down. Then we have to put our 2 shoulder buttons back on. Then we have our back plate, and a bit of advice for this one from, we'll say, personal experience. You wanna make sure the power switch, which is always in this down position, so that's always in the same spot there, but definitely the volume slider, because this can be technically anywhere. You see it down here. I'm gonna just slide it all the way to the left, which it already jumped out at me. And that way you don't break them. Because otherwise you might try to figure out, okay, why is this not pushing down? It's because these aren't lined up, and you will legitimately break off your volume or your power switch just trying to press down to close it. Otherwise though, we just have to put the screws in the back. Now we get to bring it all together, or at least attempt to bring it all together with the glass front that has the nice Game Boy Macro logo right on it. And the idea here is to cover up as much of like the silver border as we can, while also making the screen fit in with the Game Boy Advance aspect ratio. Okay, we'll see if this lines up. The back here has adhesive all the way around it, so hoping if I can just drop this in just right, it'll sit flush. Well, it seems to be on there. Doesn't feel like it's gonna fall out or anything. It's definitely stuck to the kind of the borders around the screen. That looks really, really good. I gotta put this back on, we'll drop a game in. That's right, I have to go through all the startup stuff. So what I'm gonna do is go in here, make sure we have the Game Boy Advance on the bottom screen. It's not gonna do us any good on the top screen. There we go, and I believe you can set it so that it starts up immediately if I have like a Game Boy Advance. There we go, game in there. So now I won't see this menu again, unless there's no Game Boy Advance game in there, or if the battery dies, in which case I have to go back through this. Anyway, let's pop in The Simpsons Road Rage. It does still do that thing where the cartridge sticks out a bit. Not much we can do about that. That's just kind of the way it was designed for the DS Lite from the factory. Oh, that speaker is loud. That's not even on like, that's not even halfway. Remember, we're using that Nintendo Switch speaker, so it's only one of them, but I mean, the Switch can get pretty loud compared to the Game Boy Advance or the DS Lite. Yeah, wow, that is, I just blasted it. That is extremely loud. Just that one speaker right up here. Yeah, I did not play this at all on the Game Boy Advance. This is back when they were trying to get 3D looking stuff on the Game Boy Advance, which was not at all designed for it. And this is also the time where we had Game Boy Advance ports of console games that were nothing like the console version. This at least tried to make it work. I mean, it's technically functional. It's a 2D, 3D version of Springfield. You drive around as the Simpsons. I mean, the console version's a classic. I don't know if the Game Boy Advance one is, but I will say it looks pretty good on this macro, and it sounds incredible, actually. Like I said, you can lower it down, it's still at a pretty good volume right there. This is the fake version I had bought of Pokemon Ruby that I still had laying around. Of course I do this video and I have all my Game Boy stuff packed up currently, but it looks good. The colors, of course, pop screen. We're just using the DS Lite stuff. The form factor though is awesome. I really like how this came together. I mean, this looks stock. Of course you still have the DS Lite card slot there, which is like, I guess if you really wanted to get into this and go like the distance and make it look as clean as possible, you could do some work on this back plate here, and you could fill this in, kind of make this look like one piece. But I think when you're just looking at the front here, I mean, that looks like it's a system almost that just Nintendo came up with. And the fact that the front is fully aluminum, it is nice for a durability side of things, because if you crack the plastic, that's gonna be pretty annoying. Now the front glass that I have here obviously could get cracked, but it still comes together and it has this really nice premium feel to it. This is a really fun project. If you have a DS Lite that is broken in such a way where, okay, I can remove the board, do a few things, and all of a sudden it's a Game Boy Macro, which is similar to a Game Boy Micro, since neither of them play Game Boy games, which is the big drawback. Clearly with the DS Lite, Nintendo removed that functionality, which means you're just playing Game Boy Advance games with this, but it's still an awesome library to go through. Another drawback is this is not a cheap modification. Most of the cost is with this front plate though, so if you don't necessarily want to go that route, and maybe you just want that cable that makes it a lot easier to bring everything together, that's like $17. And then you can get a Switch speaker on eBay if you don't want to pull one out of your Switch, and that's a couple of bucks there. So realistically, if you have a DS Lite that is just broken and you're able to salvage the board and the bottom screen along with the back casing, Yeah, you could make one of these for realistically like $25 to $30. But I will say, if you do want to make this modification a reality, I would spring for that front panel. It makes it look so nice. They have a couple of different colors. They go in and out of stock, so you may have to check in from time to time, but what a really cool modification and a way to recycle a system, let's face it, that was probably just gonna get thrown out in the first place. In fact, I was able to find this DS Lite on eBay for $20. That was it, just because it wouldn't turn on. Got kind of lucky the fact that it was just that top screen, but technically you could find one broken in half and still make this modification work. But let me know what you guys think about this down below. Love that the Game Boy Macro has become such a thing that we have people machining front plates out of aluminum and even creating cables for the inside to make the install process that much easier. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.